Hi, I'm Claire Clark, and today I'm going to be showing you how to make sweet paste tartlets, but with a difference. We're going to be using a cheesecake filling and topping them with some amazing tropical fruits and making them look absolutely sexy. Really great for a lovely summer picnic or a superb dinner party dessert. First, I'm going to make the sweet paste. So I'm going to put my butter into my mixer. I've got the mixer fitted with the paddle attachment, and I'm going to add my sugar. I'm going to put that on a fairly low speed, and we're just going to cream it lightly together. Don't go mad. We're not making it light and fluffy. We're not making a cake. We're just making pastry. So it just needs to be brought together until it's combined. Now you can see that it's come together, so I'm going to start to add my egg gradually. If you find your butter's a little bit hard, then what you can do is pop it in the microwave before you start. It needs to be pliable, not rock hard from the fridge. So start with room temperature butter. So a little bit of the egg. I've just beaten my eggs together. Again, on a low speed. And just combine that. You have to be a little bit patient. So the egg's got to work into the butter. Stop the machine every so often and just scrape down the butter into the bottom of the bowl and combine the ingredients. There we go. I can see that's coming together, so I'm going to add a little bit more egg. I'm going to stop one more time and scrape down again. Once you can see that they're nicely combined, we can add the flour. Now I'm using plain flour, and I'm going to add a pinch of salt to it, and I'm going to put it all in together in one go. I have pre-sieved my flour, so in there goes the salt, and I'm just going to take the whole lot and put it into the mixer. Now be really careful, check the speed of your mixer. You want it to be on low, otherwise you're going to be covered in a cloud of white flour. So you just put it on really low. Okay, you can see that coming together now. You can see it started to form a dough. Be really careful at this stage. You don't want to overwork it because that's what makes pastry tough. Okay, I can see that it has started to come together, so I'm going to stop and I'm going to take it off the machine. You can see that. So I'm just going to mix that little bit, the last bit by hand, to form it into a ball. And now look, you can see how easy that was to do. And I'm just using the one hand, and I'm being very gentle with the dough. What you're going to need next is a sheet of silicone paper or greaseproof baking paper. And I'm going to put my pastry into the middle. I'm going to fold this bit over the top and press down. You're going to take your rolling pin, and you're going to roll so it covers the whole pastry in there. I go one direction first. Turn the paper around and go in the other direction. Once you've done that, you can work on the width. Now I can see that it's covering the whole sheet, so we now need to put this in the fridge to chill down. So our pastry has been in the fridge for a couple of hours and it's nicely chilled. So we're going to need some pastry cases, some pastry cutters, a tray, and some baking beans to fill them with. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take my pastry, and this is where you can release it from the paper. So be careful, just kind of support it a little bit with your hand and pull gently, little at a time, just releasing the pastry. There we are. So I've released it from the pastry. Now I know that my cutter is not actually big enough for this tart shell, so I'm going to be using the lid. But obviously you want to match your cutter to the size of your tin. So I'm going to place that on there. I'm going to take a knife and I'm going to cut it just a little bit bigger than I need. You'll see why. And then carefully support the paste. Now you can see the texture of my pastry. That's how it needs to be, soft enough that you can handle it, but not too soft that it's melting. And if it's too hard, you're just going to leave it on your tart tin until it comes to room temperature before you try and drop it down into the tart case. There we go. You see I'm just gently pushing it into the tart case. I'm going to do that with all the tarts that I have. Now I've got particularly good cold hands, which is great for a pastry chef. But if you don't, I recommend that you can use a little bit of flour on the tips of your fingers, because that will stop the pastry from melting. Okay, so we're going to take one of the cases. And first off, we're just going to press it up around the edges gently. Okay, so I've pressed up around the edges. You can see it's nicely in there. I'm making sure that it's touched the bottom and that it's not pulled away from the edge. So if you have trouble with that, I'm going to show you another tip. What you're going to do is take a little bit of the pastry, roll it into a ball, and just use it to press down. Again, if you find it's a little bit sticky, dip the piece of pastry in a little flour, but that helps get it right into the nooks and crannies. Okay, there we go. Just using my thumb. This is actually called thumbing up. You can see why. I'm just thumbing up the pastry, pushing it into the sides, not being too ferocious with it, nice and gently. So I know it looks like I've got a lot of pastry along the edge here, but you need that, okay? Because we want to get a nice, neat cut afterwards. You need a little bit excess to be able to do that. Okay, now before I take the excess pastry off, I'm just going to press it lightly over this side of the edge. And then you can do it with a rolling pin or with a knife. I'm going to cut at a slight angle away from me over the side of the tin. Okay, so it's nice and neat. So again, press it down slightly, use your knife at an angle, take off the excess, and it will help the pastry not to shrink back if you've got to cut it on an angle. Just gives it a little bit more leeway in the baking. What we're going to do once you've got them all lined is we're just going to give them a little bit more of a chill in the fridge for about 20 minutes before we bake them blind. I'm now going to show you how you can prepare your tins for baking blind. There's two ways you can do that. You can use a cupcake or muffin case, and it's just a case of taking that. What I do is I break them down, so just push them up so they're about half the way down, to get them slightly flatter all the way around, and you can see they become slightly flat. And then you place that into the case just like magic, and you fill it with your baking beans. Now you might have metal baking beans, and that's great if you have, but if you haven't, pulses work amazingly well, and they're cheap. You can reuse them over and over again. I just store mine in a jar, put a lid on it at any time I need it, whip them out and use them again and again. I've got here rice and I think chickpeas, but anything would do. Lentils work well as well. And I filled it right to the top, so you can see my beans are level with the top of my pastry. So that's one way. Or you can use cling film. I also like this method. And you just make a little package of your cling film and pop it into the middle of the tart case. The cling film is actually stuck together in the same shape as my tin. That's because I've already baked them once. And they make these wonderful little packages, so when you come to do it again, you're all ready to go, and you just drop the whole thing into your prepared cases. They're ready to go in the oven. So I've preheated my oven to 175, and I'm going to put them in for about 20 minutes. And at 20 minutes, I'm going to take them out the oven and just check that the pastry is actually cooked all the way through. If it isn't, there'll be a white patch on the bottom. It looks a little bit raw as opposed to the outside. You take out the baking beans and then you return them to the oven for about 10 minutes until they're fully cooked. They should look nice and they should look golden brown. So these have been out the oven and I've cooled them down. So the next thing is to coat them with a little bit of chocolate. Now this is to make a seal between the filling and the pastry so it doesn't go soft. You don't have to chocolate them. If you're going to eat them straight away or in a couple of hours, that's fine. If you want to make them ahead of time, I suggest you do use chocolate. It doesn't matter. It can be milk chocolate, white chocolate, dark chocolate, whatever your preference, but it really does help. So I've got a little bit of melted chocolate here, pastry brush, and I'm going to keep them in the cases to do this just because it saves them getting broken, because they are quite delicate. And there we go, all the way around, up the sides a little bit as well. So I'm going all the way around, So the next thing to do is to make our cheesecake filling. Wow, this is just so yummy. So I'm going to take my cream cheese and I'm going to put that into the bowl. And I'm going to put my sugar in the bowl as well. Now I'm using leaf gelatin because it is a better quality. And I'm going to put it into cold water, what we call bloom, which is to get it soft. So into the cold water, make sure it is cold, otherwise it just dissolves. So let's put it into the cold water, make sure it's immersed and leave it for at least 2 to 3 minutes until it becomes soft. So we've got our cream cheese in there, which is looking lovely, our sugar. Last thing to go in is the vanilla. Now you can add other flavorings, it's totally up to you. You could, let me see, do some lemon zest. You could put a little bit of caramel in there, even chocolate. It's really entirely up to you. But I'm going classic vanilla. So I'm scraping the seeds from my vanilla pod. Vanilla essence is also absolutely okay. Whatever you have in your cupboard or whatever you fancy. So I'm just going to cream these together. You can do it on the machine, but to be honest, there's no point. It just comes together so easily. So once that's nice and smooth, you can see all those lush vanilla in there already. Let's check our gelatin. No, it's not fully bloomed. It's still firm, so we're going to leave that a little bit longer. In the meantime, you're going to need to semi-whip some cream. So I'm using some double cream here, but whipping cream is also fine. It just gives us a slightly lighter cheesecake filling at the end of the day. Okay, I can see now my gelatin is fully bloomed. Look, it's pliable, it's no longer firm. So we're going to put that into a microwavable dish. And I'm just going to add a tiny little bit of the water in there. I mean, a teaspoon of the water in there. That's just to help it dissolve. And I'm going to pop that in the microwave. Again, keep an eye at 20 seconds maximum. It's only to dissolve it. You can see that's fully melted. So I'm going to add that to my cream cheese. In it goes. Look, it should look liquid like this. In it goes. We're just going to mix that through. Now we're going to add our semi-whipped cream. I'm going to add about a third of the cream to the cheese. The reason I'm adding a third is if I add it too quickly, it might go lumpy. Wow, this really smells delicious. It's really becoming light now. All that cream has increased the volume. So the last bit in, and then mix that through. That is divine. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is fill the tart cases. So this is when you're going to remove them from the cases, leave them on a tray, and then you can either pipe or spoon your mix into your cases. I'm going to fill mine about 2/3 full. And then they can go into the fridge. And you probably need 10 minutes before we can finish them with the fruit. I'm going to show you how to prepare some tropical fruits. So I've got a lovely array of fruit for my fruit tarts, but these ones are a little bit more tricky. So I have here an absolute gorgeous dragon fruit, and it looks amazing, but we are actually going to take the skin off. So the easiest way to do that is to take the top off and take the bottom off. That way you've got a surface for it to stand. We're then going to cut that pink flesh away. So I'm using a serrated knife, and I'm just keeping it close to the fruit and running it between the fruit and the skin. Inside is this absolutely glorious white flesh that's speckled with black. It's quite juicy. And it's pretty much the same for the mango, but the mango has a stone in the middle. So we're going to cut off the top and the bottom. Again, run the knife between the fruit and the flesh. This is a beautiful ripe mango. You can see how lovely and juicy that is. What I'll do is I'll slice all the other fruit. So I've prepared all my fruits ready, and all that's left is to put the fruit onto the cheesecake tarts themselves. So I don't like anything to lay too flat. So I'm just going to start by making a mixture of flat items. All your fruit should be inside the frame of your tartlet case. You shouldn't really have fruit that's hanging outside. It doesn't make it very easy to pick up and to eat. So bear that in mind. So you can see I've created like a border for most of the fruit there. I think I'll use the fig on the outside there. For me, the more colours the better. It's nothing to stop you when it's in, let's say, strawberry season, just doing strawberry tarts. They also look glorious. It's okay to sort of just pile it on top. That works well as well. You can overlap things. What haven't we got? Raspberries, blueberries. We've put some blueberries in there. I think that'll go well next to the kiwi. Put some blood orange in there as well. Just love the colour of these blood oranges. And then this beautiful dragon fruit in the middle. And I think what we need is a few raspberries on there as well. But I'm going to cut them in half, just because I think they look nice when they're cut open. They're looking pretty full. As you can see what I mean about getting height. You need to get the height in there so they look attractive. Now you could serve those exactly like that, but what we're going to do is we're going to glaze them. So if we serve them like that, we've got to serve them straight away. Now we might not want to do that, so what we're going to do is we're going to put a glaze over the top, and that seals in all the freshness and makes them last for at least 8 hours. The next thing we're going to do is make what I call nappage, but you will call flangel, glaze. This is a product from Dr. Oetker called Veggie Gel, and it gives the same professional finish as the nappage that you will see professional pastry chefs using, and it is so simple to make. So all we're going to do is we're going to take the water, put it onto the heat. As you can see, I've got this amazing induction here, and it actually comes through the marble table, but it does make a little bit of a noise. You can see it just coming up to the boil now. Before it starts to get to a rolling boil, I'm going in with my veggie gel, and I'm just sort of sprinkling it and whisking at the same time. Now I'm just going to bring that back till it's at a rolling boil, and then it's ready to use. So now I'm ready to glaze them. We're just going to take a brush, and we're just going to dab that onto the surface, and you can see how beautiful and shiny that makes them. You just have to garnish a little bit more, and everything is better with a little bit of gold leaf. So I'm going to add just a touch of gold leaf to mine. I'm going to use a sharp knife just to attach it to the fruit, just dapping it on in the middle. It's just a little twinkle. And then I've got some edible violas. Let's see, you can put a couple of petals on each, but just break them down into single petals. It's best if you're going to use the violas or any edible flower that you do this at the very last minute, just before you serve them. And then I have some very special micros. So I'm just going to put 3 little pieces on each tart. Just adds another dimension, flavour-wise, but also adds a little bit of interest as well. I am super pleased with the ways these are looking. I mean, they just look absolutely glorious. And that just leaves them to be put onto a beautiful dish. I've got my very, very special rack china there, which is absolutely the perfect size and length. There's only room for 4, which of course leaves the 5th one for me. Aren't these spectacular? I hope you'll make them yourself, and that you'll join me again for more delicious patisserie soon.